Welcome everyone to the Thunder Buddies podcast, your source for all things Thunder basketball, courtesy of the Oklahoman. My name is Justin Martinez, and today I'm joined once again by our columnist Joe Mussatto. Joe, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Justin. You're back from Vegas a little quicker than I thought you would be.
Yeah, a little quicker for sure as OKC fell short in the semifinals, 111 to 109 against the San Antonio Spurs. Ended up having to book a flight the next morning and was supposed to get home at like 3:30. And okay, so actually, we were talking about this off camera. I didn't get to tell you fully. I was supposed to get there, or I was supposed to have a connecting flight, and I was kind of cutting it a little bit close in Vegas. Some like rodeo show had just ended, so the whole airport was filled with people in like cowboy hats and all this stuff, which shouldn't be anything new for me. I'm from Texas, but um, so many people there, so I was cutting a little bit close, and I had like 10 minutes once I got through TSA to get to my gate, and I was already like going through like the baggage like check thing. So I was like, okay, I could probably make it, but I was like, there's a flight that's only 20 minutes later. Let me go ahead and just
hmm
do that so I don't have to run to the gate. And that flight that I ended up rebooking ended up getting rescheduled and rescheduled, and it turned into like a 12-hour travel day. So had I just sprinted to the gate, I probably could have gotten home about 5, 6 hours earlier. So
I'm
bit of a
sorry to hear
mistake.
that. I guess there's a life lesson in there, but I probably would have done the same thing that you did.
Yeah, but anyways, OKC did end up losing in the semifinals by 2 points to San Antonio, falling to 24-2 on the season, snapping a franchise record winning streak of 16 games. Joe, we're gonna go ahead, and that's gonna be the bulk of this episode, is just talking about this matchup. It's the first time we got to see these two teams facing off this season, and it really didn't disappoint. The return of Victor Wembanyama after he had been out since November 14th due to a left calf strain. Didn't start this game, but even though his minutes were limited, his impact definitely was not. He had a huge presence. A lot to talk about here, but just go ahead and get started. What kind of stood out to you about this matchup?
Yeah, I mean this was like as full strength that we've seen really the Thunder and the Spurs this season. So to have that come together in the NBA Cup, I thought was awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed watching this basketball game, Justin, because we've gotten so used to these Thunder blowouts and kind of non-competitive games. I'm not saying it's boring, Thunder fans. I'm just saying it is what it is. So anytime you see kind of a close game with some heightened stakes, you haven't seen the Thunder in this spot really since the playoffs, or maybe that game against Houston earlier in the season felt like that. But um, I I don't have any like huge takeaways. Nothing about this game changes the way I feel about the Thunder. But I guess I'm even a little higher on the Spurs just because we've seen it. We've seen that they can compete with OKC. I don't think they could do it over the course of a 7 game series. But Victor is just so darn good. Even in a limited sample that we saw him, these San Antonio guards are getting better and better. I think they're well ahead of where we thought they would be. Uh, referencing Castle and Harper, and then Fox is playing some of his best basketball as well, and they've got depth and Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson. So I just thought it was a really fun matchup.
Yeah, without a doubt. You mentioned OKC being close to full strength, or as close as we've seen this season. Isaiah Hartenstein back after a 6 game absence due to a right solar strain. Alex Caruso, Lou Dort recently returned. Cason Wallace had a little bit of like an injury scare against Phoenix in that quarterfinals. Ran into a hard screen there. Thought maybe like a concussion or something. Not the case. Ended up playing as well. So outside of like Isaiah Joe, who's
hmm
still dealing with a new knee contusion, everyone from last year's championship roster was available. Like we mentioned, Victor Wembanyama was also back after his absence. So definitely a good challenge for OKC. Sticking with Wemby, he was obviously the main headline entering this one. His return, first game against OKC, and he really didn't disappoint. Like we mentioned, he did not start in this game. First time he came off the bench in his 3 year career, which was a little bit of a surprise, but also, Mitch Johnson had mentioned the day before to like obviously conditioning is going to be something that's going to be a process for him as he gets back into it. Wemby does. He had mentioned that like the first time we saw Wemby playing live, he was out of breath from playing the video guys on the staff. So like there was going to be some conditioning stuff. He didn't play the entire first quarter, even when he did play. after that moving forward. It was kind of in short stretches, but finished with 22 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks in only 21 minutes, and he shot 6 for 11 from the field, was a plus 21, which was a team high. I mean, we obviously know Wemby's game, but I mean, just the impact that he has defensively, even if he's not necessarily swatting shots, like he's just deterring guys from even going up around the rim. Offensively, he was just a menace. OKC tried throwing Chet Holmgren on him, Jalen Williams on him, Jado, I'm saying, even Alex Caruso tried,
Yeah.
like maybe, bringing back some of that magic against like Nikola Jokic in last year's playoffs. Just was not working, even though he was giving his best shot. Just a complete monster on both ends of the floor, Wemby is.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Caruso there at the end, and he got him once. He made Wemby sort of fumble the ball as he was going to the rim, forced a turnover. But Wemby can just lean back and fire over a guy like Caruso and just be unbothered because of the height difference. So Wimby just brings so much juice to the game. Like if you're just casually watching, you just sit up in your, chair a little bit more when Wimby comes in. And that's kind of what this felt like, this showcase game. And he's he's not arrogant, but he's so confident because like he knows how good he is too that kind of brings something a little extra. You obviously have the Chet Wimby rivalry there. Um, but yeah, I take us inside the arena, Justin. Like what was it from the TV? It sounded like a heavy Spurs crowd, but I'm sure that that's just people like wanting to cheer on Wimby. Is it how did it feel in the arena?
Yeah, I was curious to ask you kind of something similar, how it kind of was reflected on TV because I mean, all eyes were on Wemby. Even in their first quarter, I don't know how much it showed on TV, but like he would occasionally go off to the side of the bench into the tunnel and like do some warm ups. And he did that a few times, and each time it looked like he was going to check in during that first quarter. And you could tell, like as soon as he was warming up, people are pulling out their phones and recording it, getting ready just in case. I mean, I was doing that as well. A lot of people on the media were too, getting ready, post that first video of Wemby coming back. And like every time he would walk back looking like he's about to check in and sit back down on his seat on the bench, you could just hear people be like, oh, like people were just waiting for him
Yeah.
to play. And when he did play, I don't know if this was on TV or was still in commercial or not. But when he did play to start that second quarter, he had like, pulled off the rip away pants and like everyone just goes crazy. Like there was just an
Hmm.
entirely new energy in the arena as soon as he checked into that game. I think like the first minute of the game, he had two putbacks, both of them drawing like crazy reactions from the crowd. I mean, just the energy that he brings, the attention that he brings, was really on full display. I don't know how much that really came across on TV, but yeah, it did feel a lot like it was a Spurs type of crowd. And I don't even know if that was necessarily Spurs fans. I'm sure there were also like, Lakers fans who stayed around or
Hmm.
Magic fans who stayed around and just wanted to see OKC lose, honestly, because that's kind of just what it's become is like this team is so dominant. Who can beat them? And it just feels like the rest of the league is kind of rooting for that. And that's kind of the sense that I got. Maybe if it necessarily wasn't like all Spurs fans, it was definitely not like a neutral setting for OKC, I would say.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I am sure that's what it was too. It's like if you go to like Oklahoma City is hosting NCAA tournament games this year, first and second round, and if Kansas is here, and I was at the game where Bucknell beat Kansas in Oklahoma City, Northern Iowa beat Kansas, and there's a lot of Kansas fans that are going crazy, but everyone else who is either from the other team or just a neutral observer is cheering on the underdog. And like that kind of does have the feel of this Thunder team is, people naturally gravitate toward the underdog. And rarely do you see a team this dominant, not really since, the KD Warriors, to where you have kind of a juggernaut to cheer against. So it's probably a little bit of both, right? The Wimby factor and the underdog factor.
Yeah, definitely created a pretty crazy environment. It was a little bit, quiet before he checked in, which I think is, I mean, I wasn't at last year's NBA Cup championship game, but I kind of got that sense also that, maybe Vegas isn't the best setting for this sort of thing. But when you got a guy like Wemby there, I mean, it really does change the dynamic of things. But as you mentioned, it's not just Wemby on this team. Their guards, I think, really stood out with De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, just the job they did defensively, specifically on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He still scored, he had 29 points, which isn't too far off from his average of like 32, but he did have a season high 5 turnovers. Wasn't able to get to his spots as effectively. Every time he got to the rim, obviously Wemby's standing there, that kind of changes things. Just what did you make of the work that the San Antonio did on Shea last or Saturday night?
Yeah, you mentioned Wemby. Even a guy like Luke Cornett, he's just so big at the rim. His length can, bother drivers. But it wasn't a great, wasn't one of those classic Shea nights. But again, I was kind of focused on the Spurs side of things just to see how they would kind of deal with that challenge. And um, I I think the future is so bright, and I mean, no one's got a brighter future than the Thunder. Don't get me wrong, but just the like poise that Harper plays with. I mean, Castle gets after it on the defensive end. Like you can see the makings of something here, and it kind of reminds you of like the Thunder of I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago, where it's like they're on the come up. Everyone can see it. They're trying to prove it against an elite team, and now the Thunder's kind of on the other side of this, taking everyone's best shot. Um, and I know you wanted to talk about like the rivalry aspect of this. I we've tried to make rivalries, Justin, and they just don't happen. I thought the Mavs would be the rivalry for the long for through the rest of this decade. After playing in the second round of the playoffs 2 years ago, and then Nico Harrison ruins that. So we got to take them off the board. You had the geographic connection too, but San Antonio's only a little bit further than Dallas. So okay, quite a bit further. But you still have Texas, you still have Oklahoma, you still have two small market franchises. You've got the Presti connections. The Thunder are very Spurs-esque in a lot of ways. You've got Wemby, Chet. Maybe this, maybe it's the next rivalry, Justin.
That's what I'm thinking too. Now, Shea was asked that after the game, and he had said that probably there's a good chance that it will become a rivalry. I will say Wemby has also kind of added to that. He made a few comments these past few days, maybe some like if you're reading into it too much, maybe, but like it seemed like some digs at OKC. I've got the quotes here. So he was asked, just about chat and pretty much the rivalry that people are trying to force on it. And his response was the MVP is on that court, obviously talking about Shea. So he's our main focus. Anybody is hard to guard when you have to help on the MVP. So kind of just, a little bit of discrediting Chet, saying that obviously he's going to play well when he's got someone else taking a lot of the focus away. And then after the game, he had another comment and he said, I'm just glad to be part of something that's growing to be so beautiful, pure, and then he paused here for a bit, pure and ethical basketball, which if you're on if you're on NBA Twitter, the big thing about OKC is they don't play ethical hoops with Shea, foul baiting, and all that stuff is what people love to say. So there was a little bit of a pause there. He selected his words a little carefully there, I think. Again, maybe looking into it too much, but I think it's fun. As hard as hard as it is to have rivalries in this era of basketball where there's so much player movement. I think it's great for the league when you actually have teams that embrace it. I haven't really heard too much of it from guys other than Wemby, but I think it's cool. I think it's two teams that are going to be great for a long time. Like you said, geographically they're pretty close, similar in play style and mindset in the way they run things. So I think it's cool.
The ethical basketball conversation just cracks me up. It's like, well, we're all too online. Uh, yeah, so I mean I agree. Really the way to create a rivalry is not just like through words and like games like this help it, like playing for stakes. It won't become a rivalry until they play a playoff series against each other because that's kind of who your rival is at the time. If you see someone over and over again in the playoffs, like I thought we might see, OKC and Dallas, and maybe Denver ends up being that team. I think there's like less combustible factors there that like would really make that it almost seems like a mutual respect more so between OKC and Denver, where there is like some talking, mostly from Wimby, but that's what makes it great between the Thunder and Spurs. And he and Chet just refuse to say each other's name or really directly reference each other. And I think like that one quote where he kind of like dismissed Chet, I think it was Dirk on the Amazon broadcast who basically was like, yeah, he probably like should have mentioned Chet. He's a great player. He's a
Yeah.
champ, and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of, you said obviously, I think we're gonna have to wait until there's a playoff series. Maybe it happens this year. Just where do you kind of place San Antonio in terms of, I guess, the Western Conference hierarchy? Obviously, it's only one game. We're gonna get to see more of them these next 2 weeks, which we'll talk about here in a second. But where do you kind of place them right now in terms of threats to OKC in the West?
I think they're third. I mean, I think I still have Denver first, Houston maybe a step behind them, and then San Antonio third. I think Houston's probably like closer to one than San Antonio is to two. But um, listen, like you just if I don't think the Thunder would have a lot of trouble in the 7 game series. Maybe the Spurs get a game, maybe two. But at the same time, like if you could avoid just a matchup problem like Wimby, I'd advise you to do so. And, just based on the odds of it and how the bracket breaks, I mean, one of those teams, the Thunder could face one of those teams before the West Finals even, and maybe face two out of those three, which would be really fun.
Yeah, it definitely was. It's going to be a hard path to the finals, regardless. There's so many good teams. I'm still with you there, where I think Denver, and this is obviously a team that just took OKC to 7 games last year, added to their roster in the offseason. I still got them as a top threat. Houston, I think Houston and San Antonio, I mean, it's not super far off, but in terms of like who I think has a better chance of maybe meeting OKC in the Western Conference Finals or something like that, I would still go with Houston. I just think they have so much size that, if they were to get matched up with, let's say, San Antonio along the way, they kind of make things a little bit more difficult for Wemby, kind of crowd up the floor and stuff like that. I would place the Spurs over like the Lakers at this point.
Mhm.
I mean, we saw in the quarterfinals without Wemby what San Antonio was able to do against a really healthy Los Angeles team, probably the healthiest they've been all season, and they blew them out. You add Wemby to that mix, I don't really know what LA could do to even stop him. So I would put San Antonio in like that third spot in terms of threats. And it seems like Minnesota and stuff below that, but that's kind of where I would land. But speaking of the Spurs, they are now advancing to the NBA Cup championship, where they're going to face New York. Just real quickly, we don't have to get too deep into it, but how you feeling about that matchup? Who do you think is going to end up winning the NBA Cup?
I'm gonna ride the Spurs. Maybe this kind of feels like their time, and the cup is like you're not quite ready to be a real contender, maybe for the big thing, but you've got the cup here to sort of announce your arrival. So I'm gonna go with San Antonio. I mean, I really like both teams. Thunder Knicks was my finals prediction, so I was kind of looking forward to maybe seeing that in the NBA Cup Finals and have some symmetry there as a possible finals preview. Uh, but Spurs Knicks are, both going to be, going to be fun. And if the Knicks come away with this, I think they're feeling pretty good about themselves, regardless of this one game. But Cleveland is just so meh this year. And you look in the East, there's other teams dealing with injuries. And I think New York has the chance to really like solidify themselves as the favorite coming out of the East.
Yeah, they do. Cleveland has not been playing too well, like you mentioned. Boston has honestly been playing better than expected, but they're still a ways away, I think, from,
Yeah.
really giving like
I
New York
shouldn't
a
have
threat.
dismissed Detroit either, but
Yeah.
I just think as far as like a contender, the Knicks have to be ahead of the Pistons, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I would say so too. That would be a great series. It was a good one last year as well. In terms of the NBA Cup, yeah, I'm going with the Spurs as well. We just saw how much they were able to make life difficult for Shea. I think they could do a similar job on Jalen Brunson with all of the guards that they have: Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper. We saw what Wemby was able to do against a really good Spur or OKC defense that had 2 7-footers. What's he going to do against the Knicks, where you've got Karl Anthony Towns protecting the rim? So I do think it's a pretty good matchup for San Antonio. I'm going to go with them winning that game, which is on Tuesday at what is it, 7:30 our time here. And OKC, meanwhile, is going to wait until Thursday. It'll face the Los Angeles Clippers at home at 7 p.m. That game ultimately got rescheduled because people thought maybe OKC would be competing in this NBA Cup title game. So it's now going to be on Thursday, and then they'll have a back-to-back at Minnesota on Friday. But Joe, I think that's pretty much all that we got here. This is kind of a quick and easy one. Just our thoughts from this matchup. But I always got to ask you any parting words of wisdom here for us, Joe, before we get out of here.
Well, you know me, very, very little wisdom, but I do think the schedule broke out interesting. It's like, yeah, you get until Thursday off, but if you're looking at a potential schedule loss, that Friday game at Minnesota kind of looms large as, coming back from Vegas, having a couple days off, then playing the Clippers at home, and then it's a late game in Minnesota the next night. So that's when I'm gonna circle.
Yeah, and then also, of course, people will be circling the next few matchups against San Antonio for OKC. They're going to go at San Antonio on the 23rd and then host the Spurs on Christmas Day. First Christmas Day game for OKC since 2018. First home Christmas Day game since the year before in 2017. It's going to be a lot of fun, and along the way, we, of course, will be providing coverage for every single game, weekly podcast per usual. Joe, I appreciate you for being on here again today.
Yeah, man, this was good. Glad to see you back from Vegas in one piece.
Definitely. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.